Hello and welcome to Wasted Plotential, the show where we discuss the wasted potential of our favourite plotlines. Dead or Alive has a weird fascination with clones. It's probably where Paul Anderson got the obsession after producing the film version. I know the film version didn't have clones, but shut the fuck up, it's a joke. I don't know, maybe Itagaki thought women have one breast that clones itself or something, but the series wasn't always about that. The clone stuff began in Dead or Alive 2, where main protagonist Kasumi had been captured by evil corporation DOA5 after winning the first tournament. Her first story mode fight is against a clone of herself that goes completely unexplained. DOA3 and DOA2 Ultimate had clones of Kasumi as background objects in certain stages to hint that there was more to Project Alpha than initially believed. The final product of Project Alpha, Alpha 152, is unleashed during the ninja raid on DOA5 in DOA4. Kasumi fights it, but it seems to escape, though it's not entirely clear. Then, the retelling of the first 4 games, Dead or Alive Dimensions, expands the plot a little. The clone from 2 is now referred to as Kasumi Alpha, who is voiced in Japanese by Kasumi's DOA 1 and 2 voice actress, which is really cool. She helps Kasumi to escape the facility and then attacks her as seen in the original 2. She is still active during DOA 3 and then, though I'm not entirely sure where it's stated, further experimentation turns her into Alpha 152. In DOA 5, Alpha is still at large 2 years after 4. Kasumi seems to cut down Bayman's squad in the prologue, but this was later revealed to be Phase 4, the new phase of the Alpha project who became playable in the last round expansion. Phase 4 never shows up again. Then Kasumi herself is cut down brutally at the halfway mark by Hayate and Ayane, respectively her brother and half-sister. The story then jumps back about a week to reveal that the Kasumi we've been following throughout 5 was actually another clone referred to as False Kasumi. The real Kasumi was just hanging out with Muramasa somewhere the whole time and only gets involved in the plot after False Kasumi's death. By sheer coincidence. She then finally puts an end to Alpha, but still isn't allowed to come home because her brother is an inconsiderate cockend. And then 6 has Phase 4 mass produced so they can show up as generic fodder in 2 scenes, but let's forget about that. It's weird that there are 3 separate clones in 5's plot, but aside from one fight between False Kasumi and Alpha, they never interact and aren't even active in the plot at the same time. Phase 4 is exclusive to the prologue before False Kasumi's debut, and aside from the aforementioned encounter, Alpha isn't even around until after False Kasumi's death. It's also weird and very wasteful that False Kasumi, the first clone of Kasumi to genuinely believe that she is Kasumi, is just casually murdered by Hayate and Ayane, from her perspective her own siblings, and Ryu is the only person who seems to even care. Clones are abominations that must die apparently, even if they aren't bad people and just want to come home. So, let's reimagine DOA5's plot in a way that makes better use of False Kasumi and the other clones. My version has a new prologue scene featuring Kasumi fighting Alpha on a bridge over a chasm sometime after DOA 4. During the fight, the bridge collapses and both fall into the chasm, which is observed by both the passing Muramasa and a DOA5 spy drone. Kasumi later appears under the reformed DOA5's care. She has amnesia of the events since the first tournament, so Eleanor is insistent that she stay on her cruise ship for now. She has also been experiencing blackouts where she wakes up in a completely different location with no memory of how she got there. Eleanor has been struggling to reach Hayate, whom Kasumi believes to still be crippled after his fight with Raido before the first game. As such, she leaves the ship to search for her brother. Eleanor and Bayman continue searching for both Kasumi and Alpha for most of the story. Around halfway through, Bayman's squad is wiped out by what appears to be Kasumi, who would not be so quick to kill someone. This tips Eleanor off to the truth, which is confirmed by former DOA5 scientist Lisa Hamilton. Alpha was projected to be capable of stabilizing her energy form into flesh and blood so as to properly imitate her genetic templates. Eleanor is then able to reach Hayate about it. Later on, Kasumi is attacked by Hayate and Ayane. The fight is playable this time as Kasumi defends herself and tries to talk them down. The two are almost sadistic in their dismissal of her as a disgusting clone. As the two cut her down, we hear Kasumi's inner thoughts as she dies, believing that her own precious brother and sister have just murdered her. In that moment, thanks to the emotional distress of the attack, she regains her memories, realizing that she only lost her own memories and retained the real Kasumi's. And it turns out that the blackouts are Alpha reawakening and compelling her to continue the hunt for Kasumi, eliminating anyone who gets in her way, such as Bayman's squad. She was Alpha 152 the entire time, and this revelation causes her mind to break. Her body destabilizes into the new form from the end of the game and she defeats Ayane and flees. Ryu Hayabusa, who was just caught up on the situation, knows where Kasumi actually is. Muramasa had entered the chasm after the fight and found Kasumi but not Alpha. He had then taken her to his home to nurse her back to health, though she was in a coma. Ryu had kept this information from Hayate and Ayane, worrying that Ayane might attempt to take advantage of the situation and kill Kasumi as she usually does. The awakening of Alpha awakens Kasumi from her coma and Ryu arrives to take her to the secret facility where Alpha awaits. The two then join Hayate in confronting Alpha. The facility in this version is where all the remaining clones were moved to and Alpha aims to release them. During a big cutscene battle, a number of stray Ninpo blasts destroy some of the clones, driving Alpha into an enraged frenzy. She defeats Hayate and Ryu takes a powerful Ninpo blast to protect Kasumi, leaving her alone to defeat Alpha. Throughout the scene, Alpha has been screaming bloody murder at her opponents, Hayate for trying to kill her while she was a lost young woman who just wanted to find her brother, and Kasumi, whose continued existence prevented her from having her own life. Kasumi, in typical fashion, apologises that she has to fight to protect the others. She mournfully kills Alpha, perhaps cradling her clone in her arms as she dies. The battle has damaged the facility enough to bring the whole thing down, ending the clone saga for good. Ideally, Hayate would learn from this experience how he could have lost Kasumi forever and would finally bring her home, making a strong case to the rest of the village for her return to be allowed instead of remaining distant like a prick. I think that having one last big clone story to wrap things up and give us some insight into the clone mindset would have been a better direction to go than to have a bunch of separate clones who aren't even active in the story at the same time, and to keep the clones alive as cannon fodder in future games. Of course, that's not to say that multiple clones couldn't be used for something. Imagine a scene in which Ayane kills one of the Kasumi clones believing it to be Kasumi herself, and then finding herself strangely horrified by what she's done, because ultimately she never really wanted to kill Kasumi. It was just her resentment over the fact that Kasumi, her half-sister, was treated like a princess by the village while Ayane herself was treated as an undesirable because she was born through rape, something completely outside of her control. And so she used these feelings towards Kasumi as justification for her actions, but in the end, that wasn't what she wanted and she realises that now. So she's naturally elated when the real Kasumi shows up and reveals that no, she didn't actually kill her. And this then leads to the next stage of their relationship, as during DOA3, Ayane had been willing to let her go meet with Hayate because she had bigger fish to fry, and then at the end of 4 she stopped Kasumi from going after Eleanor who was about to die, and now she has fully accepted that she does love Kasumi as a friend and sister, and perhaps she could help convince Hayate and the rest of the village that letting Kasumi come home is the right thing to do. So even with the story they went with, there was a lot of potential, but they didn't really capitalise on it. I wish the clone story was over and done with and that we could move on to something new. The series hasn't had a new boss character since DOA4 introduced Alpha in 2005. Think about that. And why does Hayate have basically no trouble cutting down someone who, clone or not, looks exactly like his own sister?
Asshole.
If you liked this video, then make sure to check out my videos on the Dead or Alive, Ninja Gaiden and Neo shared universe timeline. The idea of that being one single universe is just insane. But if not, then make sure to share it with your enemies so they can suffer along with you.